All right. I wanted to transition to college for you because I really thought this would be an interesting topic. So, given that only 22% say that the cost of getting a 4-year degree today is worth it if someone has to take out loans, why don't you make me a case for college?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm pretty pragmatic. Economist now. Heading up a business school, so I'm going to turn to this more of a into a return on investment outcome.
Sir.
I think the world has changed where, as the supply of college educated, individuals has gone up,
Mhm.
just having a college degree of any type might not be as just, across the board, clear cut beneficial as it used to be. So, I mean, you've got some supply issues there, but then you also have, on the demand side, if employers are realizing that, their needs have grown to a point where it's not just general skills that you might get from any college degree that make an employee more effective, but specific things in specific areas, well, then there's more people coming out and there's less demand for certain areas. Yeah, it's a bad outcome for some graduates. Now, I do think that if done well, all degrees, a high level of critical thinking, the general education, the well-rounded knowledge, and seeing how things interplay, if done well and the student engages with it, it's really hard to quantify the positive effects on that individual's productivity and the outlook.
Right.
But if we're talking about pure dollars and cents, I think the level of debt and the choice of where to go to school and for what has to play a factor. I mean, if you're going in and you're incurring, six figures of debt and you're coming out with, even the best education, but in a field where the market's only going to compensate you $40,000 a year, it's going to be really hard to pay off that debt, let alone survive, right?
Mhm.
And then you get to a point of, all right, well, was it the major or was it where you got the major? And so I think it's that dollars and cents. It's a little bit of a choice. So, I mean, I think it makes the argument more for really the public good of education and getting
Right.
back to, states being able to finance and setting aside resources because it expands the labor force of the population. It makes education more accessible to everybody. Right? And now I'm not saying that all public colleges are all ours included are cheap by any means, but in a relative sense they tend to be a little bit cheaper.
It's definitely going to vary, especially like which state you're in, where you are,
Yeah,
because it's going to be proportional to income because income is essentially higher or lower depending on where you are. So is the cost of living. So it's all
yeah,
going to vary based on that as well. And one thing that I saw with a lot of my classmates is they chose to go out of state. So they're unintentionally accruing more, if they're taking out loans, more debt, and all they're doing is going out of state. Maybe it's for a better education. Yes, okay. But is that increase in cost going to come back later because of where your degree is? Or are you better off staying in state? Now, I can
right.
confidently say that that would be the case if you went to like Harvard or Stanford. But if you went to like the University of like Utah, like, is that really going to help you as much as you think it is?
I mean, and I think again, that gets into that. And there's some intangibles too, right? There's that network
Mhm.
effect. You mentioned Harvard. Yeah.
Yeah.
Harvard,
Yeah.
MIT. Yeah. You're plugging into a network that alongside the degree, there's, substantial benefits. There's cachet of having that degree. Um,
Mhm.
it depends. I mean,
Yeah.
I hate to say it, but that's a very typical economist answer. But it really does depend on really a portfolio of choices. And I think but I will say a lot of people like you talked about your friend group going out of state because like, well, I'm not going to go there. Everybody goes there. Well,
Mm-hmm.
in staying in state, that's great, but that isn't necessarily a clear cut outcome. Um,
I I'm kind of that. I think it's really funny when people are like, I want to be different. And it's like, why do you want to be different? Think this through. People are the way they are because of specific reasons. And you wanting to break out of the box, you better have a damn good reason to break out of the box.
well, in this context, you may be different from your friend, but if
Mm-hmm.
you're joining a university with 60,000 people who are all in state, you're just paying more to get the same outcome that other 59,999 people are going to have too. And
Mm-hmm.
so, yeah, does that sell then? Like only if you're competing within the same friend group back at home,
Mm-hmm.
perhaps. And we don't even know, depending on the choices you make, whether or not there is even that, that outcome. So I will say part of it I think is a public perception, and I think part of it's the labor market's really hot right now. Right? You
Mm-hmm.
can go out. You can get a job, particularly in the trades, particularly with lower levels of education, formal education. You can do really well. I would when I hear these statistics, I take it two ways, and there are some concrete things that I think higher ed has done and needs to do. So we'll come back to that. I don't want to leave that, but I do think too. And you get these anecdotes like so and so did this, no education. Either look at the company they built or look at
Mm-hmm.
them doing this in this trade and they make this amount of money. And it's true, right? It's an actual data point. But if it's a sample size of one, you don't necessarily know if everybody tried to do that, that there wouldn't be that outcome,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, we see it in small cases, right, where you can go out and have a home improvement business and you have your network in an area and you can do great, but then we'll see like a mill shut down or a trade, a major employer where blue collar people, and everybody tries to do it, and you see a reduction in what can be charged to a point where
Mm-hmm.
you're not covering costs, and again you get different skill levels involved. Not everybody can go that outcome. And so that's the tricky thing right now is it's easier to say that for people and get those survey responses in such a hot labor market. Not saying, not wishing a recession on people so
Yeah.
that they, go back to school, but it changes perception.
Mm-hmm.
I do say though, higher ed has had to evolve and has further to go. Um,
Yeah.
I can say what we've done, in the Century School of Business and Econ, we've really focused on, I mean, we're not the only business program around, right? And so we've had to change, and especially as a university that hasn't always traditionally been known as a destination for business education in the universities of Wisconsin system. So why us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why not go to someplace more established? And so we forced to look at that niche and we said, here's what we're hearing. Well, let's focus on skills. Let's focus on getting people, making them career ready with concrete, identifiable skills, either through certifications in specific topic areas that employers are looking for or that they can market, or broader behavioral based competencies like effective decision making and interpersonal communication that aren't content and knowledge specific, it's more practice specific.
Yeah.
And
I
giving them,
I want
go
to note
ahead.
on that because I actually think the business school here is actually doing a really good job of getting people out and forcing them to network because it's graded in basically every single class. So you
Yeah.
don't have much of an option. So you're forced to gain the skills whether you like it or not.
Hey,
In
that's the
addition,
economist. Incentives,
yep,
incentives help.
they do. The other one that I think is really good with this is adding the data analytics program. That's the only reason I'm at point is because of the data analytics program. So,
That's awesome.
fun fact, data analytics in the business school specifically, which is what I wanted to go into, is only offered in Wisconsin in Madison and Stevens Point. That's it.
That's